There is a price to pay for being a disciple of Jesus, not just a follower. This is a truth that many avoid stating, not because it is false, but because it challenges expectations. We live in a time when faith is often presented as a path to benefits, quick fixes, and emotional comfort. But when we look at the words of Jesus, we perceive something very different. He never hid the cost of discipleship. On the contrary, he made sure to make that clear from the beginning. Jesus never called anyone with vague promises. He called with truth. He said that whoever wanted to follow him should deny themselves, take up their own cross, and follow him. These words are not symbolic in a superficial sense. They speak of real, daily, profound renunciation. They speak of giving up something to gain something greater. The problem is that many want the benefits of the gospel without accepting the process. They want peace, but not surrender. They want hope, but not obedience. They want to follow Jesus, but without losing anything. And Jesus never promised that. He always made it clear that following him would cost something. From the beginning of his ministry, Jesus attracted crowds, curious people in need, people seeking miracles, but not all were willing to pay the price. When he began to speak of renunciation, many left. This teaches us something profound. Not everyone who approaches is ready to follow. Jesus didn't chase after those who left. He didn't soften his message to keep his followers. This reveals the value he placed on truth. Following Jesus isn't about quantity, it's about commitment. It's not about popularity, it's about faithfulness. The price of following Jesus doesn't begin with grand visible sacrifices. It begins in the heart. It begins when we choose to obey, even when it goes against our desires. When we choose to trust, even when we don't understand. When we choose to persevere, even when it would be easier to give up. Jesus knew this path wouldn't be easy, which is why he never presented it as such. He knew that discipleship demands decisions that don't always make sense in human eyes. It demands saying no when everything within us wants to say yes. It demands letting go of control, pride, and personal plans. Following Jesus costs you the right to live only for yourself. It costs you the comfort of always being right. It costs you the need for approval. It costs you expectations that don't align with the kingdom. And that's frightening because it challenges the ego. It challenges what we consider safe. Perhaps that's why many prefer an adapted Jesus, a softened gospel, a faith that doesn't confront. But that is not the Jesus of the Gospels. The true Jesus calls us closer but does not deceive. He welcomes us but transforms us. He loves but also confronts us. The price of following Jesus also involves losing things that seem important. Relationships that don't understand your faith, paths you could have taken but chose not to. There are real losses. Jesus never denied this, but he also never said that these losses would be in vain. When the disciples left everything to follow him, they didn't know exactly where it would lead them. They simply trusted. And trusting without guarantees is one of the purest forms of faith. They had no promises of earthly success, only a calling. Following Jesus is not an invitation to comfort, it's an invitation to transformation. And transformation hurts because it demands change. It demands leaving behind old versions of ourselves. It demands spiritual growth. Perhaps today you are wondering if it's worth it. Perhaps you feel that following Jesus has cost you more than you imagined. And this feeling doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It could mean exactly the opposite. It could mean you're living the gospel in a real way. Jesus never promised that the price would be small, but he always made it clear that the value of what is received is infinitely greater. And that's what we begin to understand when we accept looking at discipleship honestly. And this honesty changes everything. As we understand that following Jesus has a price, an inevitable question arises, what exactly does he ask of us? Because the cost of discipleship is not abstract. It manifests itself in concrete choices, in silent decisions, and in renunciations that often go unseen. Jesus didn't ask for something he himself hadn't experienced. He asked for total surrender because he was totally surrendered. Following Jesus demands priority, not just a place on the agenda, but the center of the heart. He said that no one can serve two masters. This isn't empty radicalism, it's spiritual clarity. When we try to divide our loyalty, we end up diluting our faith. Jesus calls us to a complete devotion, not a partial one. This calling directly confronts our need for control. We want to follow Jesus, but still decide everything for ourselves. We want to hear his voice, but only when it confirms our plans. Jesus never offered that kind of relationship. He called people willing to trust, even when the path didn't make immediate sense. The price of following Jesus also involves obedience when it's uncomfortable. There are times when obeying means going against one's own will, against the opinion of the majority, against human logic. Jesus lived this. He chose to obey the Father, even when it led him to the cross. And he made it clear that whoever follows him must be willing to walk by the same principle. Many turn away at this point, because even loving Jesus seems possible. But obeying when it hurts is another story. Obeying when there is loss, obeying when there is silence, obeying when there is no applause. This is the true cost of discipleship. Jesus also made it clear that following him can mean ruptures, both internal and external ruptures. Internally, we break with old patterns, old habits, and desires that do not align with the kingdom. Externally, we may face misunderstanding, rejection, and estrangement. He never hid it. He said it would be like this. This kind of breakup doesn't happen all at once. It's a daily process. Each day brings small decisions that reveal who is at the center. Every seemingly simple choice carries a profound spiritual weight. And it is in these silent choices that discipleship is built. The price of following Jesus also involves carrying one's own cross. This doesn't mean seeking suffering, but accepting the path that God allows. It means not running away from the process, not abandoning faith when things don't go as expected, remaining steadfast even when the journey becomes difficult. Jesus knew that many would confuse the cross with punishment, but in the gospel, the cross is an instrument of transformation. It is the place where the ego dies so that true life may emerge. And no one goes through this without feeling it. That is why discipleship has never been presented as something easy. Perhaps you imagine that following Jesus would free you from inner conflicts, emotional struggles, or moments of doubt. But Jesus never promised that. He promised to walk with you through these things. And that companionship changes everything. The price of following Jesus is also the price of not fully belonging to this world. Your choices begin to seem strange. Your values begin to clash. Your hope comes to rest on something that many do not see. And this can be lonely, but it is also profoundly liberating. Jesus never deceived anyone about this. He was honest. Those who follow him must be willing to lose in order to win. They must be willing to die in order to live. They must be willing to trust without human guarantees. We are moving to an even deeper point because understanding what Jesus demands leads us to confront an essential question. Why, then, is it worth paying this price? When we finally confront the cost of discipleship, a question arises that echoes in the heart of anyone who takes their faith seriously. Why pay this price? What makes someone give up so much to follow Jesus? The answer lies not in immediate benefits, but in something much deeper. It lies in the eternal value of what one finds by walking with him. Following Jesus changes the way we see life. What once seemed essential begins to lose its power. What once seemed small gains eternal significance. This change doesn't happen abruptly, but gradually. Little by little, the heart learns to value what remains, not just what shines for a moment. Jesus never promised quick rewards, but spoke of treasures that cannot be lost. This directly challenges our culture, which values visible and immediate results. Discipleship teaches us to live with our eyes on the unseen, trusting that God is working even when we don't perceive it. The value of following Jesus is also revealed in inner transformation. Little by little, pride gives way to humility. Anxiety gives way to confidence. Fear loses its power in the face of faith. These changes are not superficial. They reach the heart, and a transformed heart changes everything around it. Many seek Jesus to change circumstances, but he begins by changing people. And this inner change is often the most painful and necessary process, because it's easier to change the environment than the heart. Jesus knows this. That's why discipleship touches so deeply. Following Jesus also gives us a new identity. We are no longer defined solely by our failures, achievements, or past experiences. We are defined by our calling. This brings freedom because it liberates us from the constant need to prove our worth. In Christ, our worth has already been established. The price of discipleship begins to make sense when we realize that what we leave behind is nothing compared to what we find along the way. Peace that transcends circumstances, hope that doesn't fade in the face of pain, the certainty that life has a purpose that goes beyond the present moment. Jesus never promised a life without loss, but he did promise a life worth living, a life aligned with the kingdom, a life that doesn't end here. This understanding strengthens the heart in difficult times. It reminds us that no sacrifice is wasted when made for the love of God. Discipleship also teaches us to love differently. A love that doesn't seek immediate reciprocation. A love that forgives even when it hurts. A love that endures even when it's misunderstood. Jesus lived this love and called us to live in the same way. Perhaps you have already felt the weight of following Jesus, the weariness of going against the current, the loneliness of choices that few understand. But it is in this place that faith deepens, because there we learn that we do not follow Jesus to be accepted by the world, but to be transformed by him. The more we walk with Christ, the more we realize that discipleship is not about what we lose, but about who we become. And who we become in Christ has eternal value, a value that no earthly loss can diminish. We are reaching the most decisive moment in this reflection, because now we need to face the question that defines everything. After understanding the price and the value, the final decision still needs to be made. After understanding the price and seeing the value, faith ceases to be just an idea and becomes a daily decision. Following Jesus is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing journey. Every day, in visible and invisible ways, we are invited to choose between comfort and obedience, between control and trust, between the self and the calling. Jesus never hid the fact that discipleship demands everything, not because it requires it, but because only complete surrender transforms us entirely. When we try to follow Jesus while remaining reserved, we end up trapped in internal conflicts. But when we surrender everything, we find freedom. A freedom that doesn't depend on circumstances, but on the certainty of living our purpose. The price of following Jesus is revealed to be highest in moments when no one is watching, in the choices we make in silence, in those we say without witnesses, in decisions that cost tears. It is in these moments that discipleship becomes real. It is there that faith ceases to be mere talk and becomes life. Jesus called us to a path that transforms the way we live, love, and hope. He called us to a faith that does not rely on human guarantees, but on the faithfulness of God. A faith that remains when the applause ceases, that continues when the path gets tough, that trusts even when the future is unclear. Perhaps today you are feeling the weight of this calling. Perhaps following Jesus is costing you more than you imagined. And that doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It means you're taking it seriously, because true discipleship has never been comfortable, but has always been transformative. Jesus didn't promise ease, but he promised life. Life in abundance, not in the sense of absence of pain, but of fullness of purpose. A life that makes sense even when it hurts. A life worth living, even when it demands sacrifice. Now, I want to invite you to sincerely reflect on what following Jesus has cost you. Write this in the comments. If you feel it in your heart, your answer can strengthen other people who are also walking through this same process. Here we don't hide the price, but we walk together with the one who is worth more than anything. Did you enjoy this type of video and content? Then thank you for leaving a like, comment, and share with your friends. Also, post the link to this video in your Facebook and Instagram story. Copy it to your WhatsApp status as well. This will encourage the revival of this channel and is totally free for you. Please also consider subscribing to this channel. Thank you very much for your participation. May God bless your life in Christ Jesus.